Be very, very quiet. I am hunting deep-cut doctorate selection horror movies. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Horror Movie Syllabus. My name is Professor Victor, and I'll be your host as we go through all of the essential, noteworthy, interesting, and notorious modern horror films. If you're new to the channel, I recommend you check out our introduction video. There's a link in the description below, and it gives you a pretty good idea of what the Horror Movie Syllabus is all about. In short, we take a particular subgenre of horror, and then we look at 3 movies from that subgenre. But today is our doctorate level selection, where we do a quick recap of a video we did on a subgenre already, and then I pick out a new doctorate level selection, a little bit of a deeper cut selection for that subgenre. Now, you've seen the thumbnail, you've seen the title, you know that today we're talking about animated horror. And when we talked about animated horror previously, we talked about how the movies tend to be kind of for both kids and adults. Like a lot of the movies we were talking about were focused on like it being kids entertainment, but also had a lot that adults could enjoy or could gravitate towards, with one notable exception in that video for sure. But we definitely did see that there is a misconception that just because something is animated, it's for kids, and that's not necessarily the case. Even though a lot of what we were looking for was for kids, or at least ostensibly was for kids. You know, your mileage may vary depending on how you feel about your kids watching certain dark stuff. We talked a little bit about how I like animation, how I grew up really liking animation, wanted to be an animator. So I have a little bit of a special place in my heart for it, even though I haven't really been as into it now as I have been in the past. And we also talked a little bit about anime and how, again, with one exception, we weren't really looking at anime in that video, and we're not going to really be looking at it too much here today either. And that's because we're going to talk about it. It's going to get its own video in the future, thanks to the Horror Movie Supplement. So if you like anime, stay tuned because we're going to get into a deep dive on that one, pretty deep in the future. So for now, as usual, we'll go ahead and kick it off with a quick recap of the original video, the movies that we talked about in the original video, and then we'll follow up with our doctorate level selection for this one. But let's go ahead and get into that recap right now. The first movie that we talked about in our previous animation horror video was Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas. And we talked a lot about how that movie is known as a Tim Burton movie so that people think that he directed it, but he actually didn't. It was Henry Selick who directed it, but it just has his fingerprints all over it, from the aesthetic and the tone, just to the iconography that is very Tim Burton-esque. It really does feel like a Tim Burton movie. It's even got his name on it, and we mentioned that in the previous video. We also talked a bit about the music by Danny Elfman and how iconic it is and how catchy it is, frankly, that even somebody like me who hates musicals likes this one, likes the music in this one, actually owns the soundtrack to it. It really is, and it's an essential part of the movie. It's what makes it so good. We talked a little bit about the stop motion animation, how good it looks, how it became iconic in its own right with these characters. These characters have become icons and just like, you know, kind of pop culture references. People know them. And this movie is really, it's transcended the horror genre and become something of a holiday staple, strangely enough. And the debate, of course, being, do you watch it on Halloween or do you watch it on Christmas? And the answer, by the way, is both. The movie is good enough to watch twice a year. So if you haven't seen it, by all means, check it out. The next movie that we talked about was Coraline. And Coraline is another movie that was stop motion animation and gets compared a lot to The Nightmare Before Christmas for a number of reasons, not the least of which is that it's directed by the same guy, Henry Selick, but also just because it's a very dark subject matter. Even though the movie is ostensibly aimed towards children, it really is quite dark. And we talked about how, you know, whether or not that's a movie that your kids should see, because younger kids in particular are probably going to be scared by it. But older kids, I think, will roll with it just fine. And I think that there's enough there for the adults to connect to, just like in Nightmare Before Christmas. There's enough fun and interesting visuals. And also there's this interesting aspect about Coraline's character, the main girl, and how she has this, you know, anxiety and all of these kind of emotional issues and things that she struggles with that, you know, people in real life struggle with. And I think that she is a character that most people can identify with and kind of gravitate towards. And I think that's part of what is a key for this enduring popularity of this movie. We talked a little bit about the performances, Dakota Fanning in particular as Coraline, and just how this is a really, really well done movie that it has its fans, but it doesn't seem like it's as famous or as popular as Nightmare Before Christmas, and it's a shame because it deserves to be right up there. And again, you should watch it twice a year. And the last movie that we talked about in our animated horror video was Perfect Blue. And Perfect Blue was the anime film that we talked about. It was the exception to the rule, and there was a reason for it, and it's just because it's so incredibly good. This movie is basically an anime masterpiece, and I was so enthusiastic to talk about it, and I still am because I think it's that good. We talked a lot about how it's very much not for kids. Unlike the other movies that we discussed, this one is definitely not geared towards or aimed towards children, and really should just be watched by adults because it's got a lot of very heavy themes, some really graphic stuff, some very taboo subject matter, some stuff that might be trigger warning material. It's definitely not for children. But we talked about how it is just a masterpiece, both in terms of like artwork and story, character development. It's just a really great movie, and how cool it would be to see it done live action, and how we kind of have seen it because we talked about the controversy of Black Swan and how Black Swan seems to borrow liberally from Perfect Blue to the point where it's basically ripping it off. And Perfect Blue is really the better of the two movies. And as much as I love Black Swan, have to give it up. Perfect Blue is better. So if you want more information on that controversy, check out the original video or do a little research because it's pretty fascinating. But if you haven't seen Perfect Blue, it's definitely one to check out. It's one that seems to fall under the mainstream radar a bit, but definitely one that you should check out for sure. So that's going to do it for our recap of our previous video. And now it's time to dig in to our doctorate level selection. Our doctorate level selection for the animated horror subgenre is Fears of the Dark. Fears of the Dark came out in 2007, and it's a French film. It's an animated anthology. It has 5 different black and white animated vignettes, all centered on the subject of fear. And it's done by a bunch of graphic artists and comic book creators, French comic book creators, that have all kind of come together to show off their various artistic talent, and they really, really do show it off here. But we're going to get into that. If you haven't seen it before, the movie is, like I said, it's an anthology tied together loosely by a wraparound narrative that is really kind of a surreal series of animated images talked over by a woman telling stories about fear, and then also interwoven with these different vignettes, all again subject matter fear, ranging from really dark to kind of cutesy, but all kind of really strange and unusual and surreal and frankly kind of beautiful. The movie is really narratively strange, but also just a joy to look at. I won't go into it any farther than that. I don't want to spoil things too much. And there's really not a lot to spoil because, like I said, the narrative is not super tight here. And like most anthologies, you're talking about a bunch of different short stories. And the short stories in and of themselves are perfectly fine to good, but they are not really tied together very well. Like most anthologies, it has that wraparound story, that wraparound concept. But in this case, the wraparound doesn't really frame things super well. So really what you're left with are these vignettes, but the vignettes are edited together really wonderfully, especially because some of them don't play straight through, but they get interspersed throughout the other vignettes. And that added a lot to the movie, especially because what is, in my opinion, the best vignette is the one that carries through most of the movie. They really spread it out throughout the whole movie, so that story kept getting told throughout the entire film, and it's the best story of the bunch, and not for nothing, probably the best animation of the bunch, or maybe the second best animation of the bunch. And the animation is what you're here for. It looks fantastic. Like most anthologies, the stories, some are better than others, and the animation on some of these are better than others, but some of these look amazing, and the ones that don't look amazing still look good. It's really fascinating to see the black and white aesthetic done in so many different ways, from like a graphic design, clear line art style to like a sketch style. And the sketch style stuff looks fantastic to me. I'm really into the way that looked. It's kind of like a 2D animation looking thing that works really, really well. There is some 3D animation stuff too, but none of this looks like the Pixar stuff that you'd be looking for. If you're looking for Pixar animation, GTFO, it's not here. It's not going to be what you're looking for. You're getting something very different here, and it's refreshing. And it's the best thing about this movie is just how good it looks. The animation really is carrying the day in this movie, and it gives the whole film this distinct like art house feel. First of all, it's a French film, it's a foreign film, so it's already got a little bit of an art house flavor to it. And then the way that this black and white animation looks, it really feels very avant-garde, very, very new wave and art house and arguably pretentious. I don't find it to be pretentious at all, but I think people might, because again, French and it's kind of highbrow, and like I said, the theme is very loose, and it's not very clear. There's like not really a narrative through line. It really does seem to be kind of like high art, and I say that as a good thing, but with the recognition that some people looking for a little bit more of a straightforward entertainment in their animated horror might not really jibe with it. Like I said, some vignettes are better than others, but I think that the good far outpaces the bad in this movie. I think that the good stuff is really great, and the stuff that is quote unquote bad is just merely okay or good. Like I said, the stories are kind of thin. Even the really good stories, the really good vignettes, the stories are kind of thin. There's nothing super deep here. And again, this theme of fear is kind of basic. It's not, they don't really have a lot more to say about it. There's nothing to challenge you or nothing to really kind of press you on this. The theme of the movie is thin. I'll be honest, it's thin. It's just fear, and it's got this wraparound story of this woman talking to, like, I don't know, like a psychiatrist or something like that, kind of talking about her dreams and things like that, and fears. And it's interesting, especially because it's accompanied with this, really cool surreal animation style of just like really weird shapes and stuff flickering on the screen, but it doesn't really tie the movie together. It doesn't tie these vignettes together into one cohesive unit or something. It's just a bunch of vignettes kind of put together, but they are interesting. They look pretty. They look amazing, actually. And it's just something that I found to be really, really great. Like I said, the artwork, the art styles were so original seeming to me, and unique and refreshing, because it didn't look like a lot of the animation we see today. But it also didn't really look like classic animation of old, like a classic Disney animation. It looked like its own thing. The last vignette in particular, which is not my favorite, it's my second favorite, but it's really, really cool looking because it just has like this negative space aspect to it where it's like black and white, and it's like white on black, and it just looks absolutely fantastic. And again, like the sketch animation stuff looks really, really great too. It just has this kind of naturalistic feel to it that feels classic, even though it's done very modern. And it just has I don't know. I just, like I said, I really love animation. I grew up really idolizing it. And this is kind of the stuff that I miss seeing as more and more computer generated animation starts to look generic, more and more the same. This movie doesn't do that. And like I said, I can forgive basic stories or, simplistic stories just to have a chance to look at this really cool artwork. It's the reason to see this movie, and I'm guessing a lot of people haven't seen this movie. It's not the easiest movie in the world to track down, and it's not the most well-known movie in the world, but it's definitely worth looking for if you like interesting animation, if you like stuff that's a little off the beaten path. Again, it's not going to challenge you too much. It's not a super deep movie, and if you're looking for like a really good fun time, this one maybe not it, because if you have to be looking at the screen, you have to be paying attention to it, because what you're doing, it's a feast for the eyes, not so much for the ears. It's not really intellectually stimulating on a narrative scale, but on an artistic scale. It's a work of art. It really is. Art house is really the right thing for it. So I would definitely recommend checking it out if this sounds like it's up your alley. And if you do check it out, of course, let me know what you think, because I don't know anybody else who's seen this movie. So let's talk about it in the comments below. So that's our Doctorate Level selection for animated horror. But if you like animated horror, like I do, I've got an extra credit movie for you to check out as well. The extra credit movie we're talking about is Mad God. Mad God came out in 2021 and kind of had a bit of buzz when it came out, and for good reason. It's really a noteworthy film. It's one of the more recent movies we talked about here on the channel, and it really did make waves. And even though it's not a super well-known movie, its reputation is well deserved, because it's pretty bug nuts crazy. It's really probably like nothing else you've ever seen before, and I mean that in a good way. If you haven't seen it before, the movie is a stop motion animated film about a character called the Assassin, who is descends into what appears to be hell, basically, on some sort of mission, a strange mission of attack or suicide, or not quite clear what it is. But it also is rife with monsters basically killing other monsters, and it's a horrific image after horrific image after horrific image as this assassin goes about his task, trying to figure out how to achieve his goal, which we're not really privy to exactly what it is, and I dare say we're not ever going to be 100% sure, but we're going to get into that as we talk more about it. And of course, I don't want to spoil things, but I don't know how I could, because once again, this is a complicated movie in the sense of narrative. It's not super clear, and I think it's simply because narrative is not really what it's about. It's about awesome stop motion animation. This movie is created by and directed by Phil Tippett, who Star Wars fans know pretty well for his creature designs, notably the chessboard creature designs in Star Wars. But he's worked on all the movies. He did some work for Jurassic Park, RoboCop. I think he won an Oscar or got Oscar nominated for Dragon Slayer. He's had an amazing career. He is incredible. and his stop motion animation is probably second only to Ray Harryhausen, or maybe possibly even better. He's really amazing at what he does, and he is front and center here. His talent is what this movie's about because it looks amazing. It is a masterpiece of stop motion. Like, look, we talked earlier about Coraline and about Nightmare Before Christmas. They look fantastic, but they got nothing on Mad God, because Mad God is just doing wildly imaginative, amazing, strange, bizarre, and grotesque things that in your wildest dreams you wouldn't have come up with. But they apparently come out in Phil Tippett's dreams, and that's interesting to me because I feel like what we're getting is a peek into Phil Tippett's mind, and it is horrific. What he's done here, and mind you, this is his baby, this is his movie. He's all, it's all him. He's come up with something that is so horrific and gruesome and just flat out bleak that it's unsettling. Like, the movie itself, story-wise, doesn't, because it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but it doesn't really matter because you're just going through a nightmarish hell. That's what it is. You're just being taken through this nightmarish hell, seeing all kinds of weird, unsightly, gruesome, disgusting things, and just kind of being like the barrage of to your senses of like gruesomeness. It's just a visually overwhelming nightmare, and I mean that again in the best possible way. This movie blew me away. I couldn't take my eyes off it. There's basically no dialogue in this movie at all. And it doesn't really matter because again, it's a feast for the eyes, not for the ears. It's another one of these movies that you're there to look at and just marvel over how, and I keep using the word over and over again because it is imaginative. Like, Phil Tippett's mind is sick and insane and amazing and awesome, and it just looks so good. It is worth noting this movie is not 100% animation. It's not all stop motion animation. There is a little bit of live action in here weaved in, and it actually adds to the movie. It makes it work really, really well. And I think that it does kind of shed a little bit of light on the narrative, which again, I'm not going to get into too much because A, I don't want to spoil it, but B, because I can't. I don't really fully understand it, but I don't care. Like, I don't care about the story per se, because I think the themes are coming through, and there maybe too many themes, arguably, but I think there's definitely kind of this idea about, the inevitability of destruction and desolation, and how we're just kind of doomed to repeat this over and over again, and how maybe like we're all really monsters when it comes down to it, and basically this sense of hopelessness that just permeates the entire film, and I think these themes come through very strongly. They're just, it's not the most uplifting movie in the world. You're not going to feel happy after watching it, but you might be elated by how awesome it looks and how wonderful this animation is. The stop motion is incredible. And apparently it took like 30 years to make this movie. Phil Tippett's been working this movie for forever. And like, he had to pause for a while for various reasons, and then came back to it. And then at some point he crowdfunded it. I think it was on Kickstarter. And he finally finished it with crowdfunding resources, and it was worth it. He has made a masterpiece. It is a visual work of art. It is wonderful, but it's probably not gonna be for everybody. Like I said, narratively, it's gonna just kind of lose you. So if you really need a strong narrative, this ain't the one. And if it's like, too gross for some people or unsettling, because it has some really gruesome stuff. Like, these are claymation, stop motion figures, but you'll feel for them. He'll make you care about them. So it is worth noting that this might be a tough ride for some people, but it is definitely a feast for your eyes. It is definitely something that if you like stop motion animation in particular, it's a must see. But I would hope that some of you have seen it already and we can talk about it. And for those of you that haven't, again, maybe check out, some of the specifics about what's going to be in there if you're sensitive, but definitely check it out. It's definitely one worth talking about. It almost made the syllabus, but I really want to talk about Fears of the Dark. So it's definitely one to recommend for sure. Check it out. So that's going to do it for our doctorate video on animated horror. We picked a couple of deeper cut ones. Mad God maybe not as deeper cut, but it's definitely not mainstream. And Fears of the Dark is really a deep cut. So hopefully you guys will check these ones out if you're interested in this kind of stuff, because they're both definitely worth your time. But now it's time to check out a horror trivia pursuit card. This is where I look at a card and try to answer this trivia question live on camera without cutting. And because of Fears of the Dark and being a French film, let's go ahead and look at a international card question. And the question is this. In 1917's Satan's Rhapsody, what does Countess Alba d'Otrivia give up in exchange for regaining her youth? And Otravita, I think I messed up that name. But it doesn't matter because I don't know the answer. So we're in guess mode right off the bat. Satan's Rhapsody, I don't think I've even seen that. And it feels, honestly, this feels vaguely familiar. Like I almost feel like we've done this question before. And if we've done this question before, I beg your pardon. And the funny thing is, if we did a question before, I don't remember the answer because I don't got nothing on this one. But yeah, 1917, not in my wheelhouse by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think I've seen the movie, or if I've seen it, I definitely don't remember seeing it. But so it's time to start thinking about what could it be. Countess de Ultravita, what does she give up in exchange for regaining her youth? And I've got like Countess Elizabeth Bathory in mind right now. This is kind of where my head's going, and I'm kind of prattling on, giving you a chance to think about it too. But I'm thinking, and I guess I'll go ahead and tell you guys to go and lock in your answer here because I'm going to start thinking out loud. Um, my first thought is like a firstborn child, like giving up a child in order to give her youth. Um, because I'm thinking again, Elizabeth Bathory and bathing in blood, the blood of children or whatever. So that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking like babies, like her babies or children. So I'm gonna go with children, hers or other people's. I don't know. So that's my guess. I'm locking it in. Lock in your answer. Let's take a look what the card says. The card says love. We definitely haven't had this question before because that just sounds stupid. She gave up love to regain her youth. All right, man. I haven't seen that movie, and I'll be honest, that question don't make me feel like I want to see it. But if you're familiar with that movie, looking at you, Kenneth, let me know if it's worth the time to check out because we are looking at some older movies on the horror movies supplement. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, I didn't get this one right. Did you guys get it right? I'm guessing a lot of you probably didn't either because it just seems like a dumb question. I don't know. I don't even feel bad about missing that one. but let me know what you guys guessed in the comments below, especially if it was a wrong answer because I love those. Until next week when we do something completely different, I'll just go ahead and say class dismissed. If only you were animated.